Good morning. It's a little breezy and everybody's at work already here. So I'm going to continue with chapter 4, understanding how anger goes awry. Jack seems to walk around with a chip on his shoulder, at the ready to contradict and to argue. Darlene is always smiling, even on the days following her husband's drunken episodes, when he has repeatedly degraded her. Carla is shy and retiring, spending most of her time doing for others, and then complaining constantly to her sister about how people use her. Jason loses his temper at the drop of a hat. These people are unable to use angry feelings to enrich their lives. Instead, the anger has turned against them and become a vehicle of pain. To discover how this distortion of nature happens, one must understand the many ways people can lose their ability to use any emotion for its intended function. Then, by combining this information with research findings and applying the results to anger specifically, it is possible to see how the anger process goes awry. And then the first part here is how emotions become distorted. Understanding the circular process of emotions and describing it on paper may make it seem easy. Obviously, it isn't. Many people have difficulty experiencing and expressing their emotions. The fact is that problems may impair any element of the process, and because it is circular, disrupt it throughout. First category is thought. My description of the emotional process crucially assumes that the interpretation of the event coincides with reality, not the subjective reality of the individual, but objective reality. When perceptions are skewed, when a person's defense mechanisms distort and limit his ability to interpret life events accurately, the range of emotional experiences diminishes. Behavioral options are fewer, and reactions from others have a greater tendency to be negative. The person applies another distorted interpretation to these reactions, and the process continues, becoming progressively deformed. Because the interpretation of an event develops from personal experience, misinterpretations are common. I once asked a worker whom I supervised to come into my office. She looked panic-stricken. I asked what was going on, and she replied, "I didn't do anything wrong." I told her that, on the contrary, I wanted to offer her a promotion. She appeared shocked. As we talked, she explained that in the past, being called into the supervisor's office meant a reprimand. Mickey, are you okay? Are you okay, babe? You cool? Okay. All right, the next category is chemical. Anything that disrupts the body's chemical balance directly affects a person's emotional state because it determines physiological sensation. In fact, serious chemical disruptions create major illnesses such as depression and schizophrenia. The reverse is also true. PMS and such diseases as diabetes cause major chemical imbalances. These illnesses produce extreme emotions and require medical treatment. Some of the other influences on a person's chemical makeup include diet, stress, resting habits, and exercise. An individual who begins to experience intense feelings that seem unrelated to real situations or events may find the cause in such factors. Prescription and non-prescription drugs also interrupt the natural production and release of body chemicals. When my friend Richard began taking prescribed steroids for a medical condition, he experienced mood swings that ranged from deep sadness to overwhelming anger. He cried uncontrollably one minute and broke things the next. He thought he was going crazy. His doctor sent him to a psychiatrist who explained that steroids cause emotional instability in some people. Because of the nature and seriousness of Richard's illness, the steroids unfortunately could not be stopped or exchanged for another medication. But much of his anxiety was reduced when he understood what was happening. Anyone taking prescription drugs who finds that mood swings are suddenly a problem should contact the prescribing physician. Another drug may be available that does not have the side effect, or the dosage of the medication may need to be modified or changed. Over-the-counter medications may also affect mood. Any substance that contains caffeine or causes drowsiness as a side effect is especially likely to produce emotional changes. Alcohol and illegal drugs interfere with the chemical balance of the body. Indeed, the sole purpose of using them is to change moods. Regular use of these substances may result in episodes of depression. Hostility or anxiety. Excessive use produces these same emotional states with greater frequency and more intensity. Such a case necessitates an evaluation and counsel by a professional who specializes in substance abuse. All right, the next one is emotion. In most cultures, taboos forbid certain feelings and their expression. The culture determines which emotions are acceptable. For instance, some boys are taught that men are not supposed to cry. Many times I've heard a parent say to a son, "Now be a man, don't cry." To suppress an emotion, especially if he feels it intensely, requires the child to hide it from themselves. The child develops a mental defense system that tells him he doesn't feel sad. The strength of this system determines how much sadness he can feel. The sadness is there, but his thinking will not allow him to experience a physiological sensation. Other taboos restrict the social acceptability of openly expressing. Other taboos restrict the social acceptability of openly experiencing an emotion. A feeling that may be all right to have at a party, but not at work. If it occurs at work, it must be concealed, masked too often. The feeling becomes hidden, even from the person carrying it. Some adults who grew up in a family that prohibited most emotions and their expression are unable to label feelings. In childhood, such a person rarely saw significant adults express certain feelings. When forbidden feelings did arise, they were assigned the name of a more acceptable feeling. As an adult, this individual continues to attach incorrect labels to these feelings, a habit that results in isolation and obstruction of intimacy. Other people, viewing this mislabeled feelings as inappropriate to the situation, back away, not only emotionally, but physically as well. All right, and the next one is behavior. Most behavioral patterns develop during childhood and then are modified by experiences throughout adolescence and adulthood. A child observes significant adults. She imitates their interactions and incorporates into her own range of possible behaviors the adult's way of resolving conflicts and problems. If these behaviors are ineffective, then the child responds ineffectively throughout her life, unless she somehow expands her repertoire. She may wonder why things don't work out, or why other people get all the breaks. Here comes the sun. Oh. The number of behaviors, effective or ineffective, accessible to an individual, are very limited. If significant adults have displayed only a few options, as the child grows older and begins interacting with others outside the family, she lacks the behaviors necessary to cope with a multitude of varying situations. This same problem of limited behavioral choices also occurs when adults, out of love. Okay, I'm going to read that whole sentence again because it just keeps going. This same problem of limited behavioral choices also occurs when adults, out of love and the need to protect, try to insulate children from painful but normal life events. A child who isn't allowed to attend funerals, for instance, will not know how to act at a funeral when they grow up. Another limiting behavioral condition exists when a person was raised in a family that provided an array of behavioral choices, but he has lacked the opportunities to expand and modify these choices through life experiences. This modification process involves skills developed by practice. This modification process involves skills developed by practice. It involves recognizing nuances in a present situation and rearranging an old behavior to fit the new necessity. All right. Running out of time here. If a person lacks diversity in life experience, he may not even be aware that circumstances require new or modified behaviors. This obliviousness often happens when a person steps from one culture into another, or from one social class to another. At a social gathering, he employs familiar behaviors that were acceptable in past circumstances, but now violate the new group's norms. At a formal dinner for contributors to our scholarship fund, I saw a guest cringe as he watched my coworker use bread to sop up the gravy on his plate, a behavior acceptable in another setting. And then this other one, the final one here, is reaction. The reaction behavior of others from the external environment affect one's internal emotional circle. When a person spends my Lord. Okay, I'll admit it. I didn't have coffee. I haven't had coffee yet. Let's try it that way. I'm drinking some body armor stuff yesterday. All right. Reaction. The reaction behavior of others from the external environment affects one's internal emotional circle. When a person spends most of her time with others who are kind, honest, and positive, the feedback is of this nature, and her internal response follows suit. The child who is told repeatedly that she is pretty begins to believe it. The worker who is acknowledged for merit sees self as worthy. On the other hand, if the people surrounding her are sarcastic, manipulative, and judgmental, the events in the environment become a negative barrage, producing an abundance of hurtful feelings. To survive emotionally, the individual must use defenses often. The more often defenses are used, the harder they are to turn off. They carry over into other situations where they are not needed, distorting the interpretation of events. A person who spends a great deal of time with a sarcastic group of people expects to hear sarcasm, not only from them, but also from others. Because of her expectation, she hears sarcasm when people do not intend it. She even hears silent sarcasm from herself. This misunderstanding results in distortions in thought. Okay, we are on page 41. And I don't think I have more time. Yeah, because that next one's gonna be its own thing. Oh, it's so pretty. I'm gonna show you. This is what's next. Baby. There we go. We're reading this to us next. Yeah, 1986. People don't change that much. Alright, and then one more picture on here. Just this one is again. Alright, my lovelies. Thank you for being with me today. You know, I appreciate you. I hope you've been enjoying some of this book. and these sunrises. You're always welcome to join me. I will read alongside you if you come and join for a sunrise. They have them all the time. I appreciate you. Have a wonderful day.